First of all, welcome to another 2 hours of God-fearing, self-righteous pomposity, or is it self-righteous, God-fearing pomposity? Sometimes I can't get that straight. I have to follow what the letter writers happen to say in their reviews of the program. But I do welcome you to our show today, and I feel a lot of you share that same self-righteous, God-fearing pomposity that I do. Otherwise, a great many of you wouldn't be here on a daily basis. Did you see? You want to talk about one of the most foolish comments that have been made so far during the political season? And we're not talking about anything I've said. Nope, nope, nope. We're talking about something said by Lightbulb head James Carville. James Carville, of course, used to be the Clinton family. He was the Clinton family consigliere through much of the 1990s. And then the job was taken over by the corrupt Terry McAuliffe. Can I get away with saying that? Well, it depends on what they're going to find with all of his money being funneled into the campaign of the deputy director at the FBI. Well, his wife, the deputy director's wife, was running a political campaign, and McAuliffe ensured she got $700,000. She lost, we should point out, too. But James Carville was making an appearance. I want to get to this in a little while on the program today because I've heard some really dopey stuff said in politics. Democrats actually think that if they keep repeating some of these talking points, that a lot of people out there are going to believe them. And it's like, I don't think that's the way it really works. To come out and claim that Donald Trump is somehow in league with the Russians in order to conspire against Hillary Clinton, I find that to be a little bit on the far-fetched side. However, Hillary has been making these comments so her fellow travelers, sycophants, and campaign appendages over at the New York Times decided they had to investigate and see whether Trump was involved with his good friend. As they like to point out, they claim it's his good friend, Vladimir Putin. And the New York Times has returned with its verdict. Nope, they found no evidence whatsoever supporting Clinton's claims that Donald Trump is in league with the Russian Empire in order to ensure that Hillary Clinton doesn't get elected president of the United States. Well, that's a strike one. How about strike two? This is another one that I came across today, and I'm not giving you the actual time story. I did read it, but this comes from Eric Erickson at The Resurgent, and he admits he's not been a Trump fan. But this is the headline from his lead piece today. It takes 5 New York Times reporters to tell us Donald Trump did not break the law. He's talking about tax law. They decided to go out because they were hoping that this week they could come out and say Trump was in league with the Russians. Well, that isn't working. They hope to come out and say Trump violates tax laws, and that didn't happen. But according to the headline, you would never know that. It says this: Trump's tax dodge stretched law beyond recognition. That's the headline. Now, they may have changed that since then under withering criticism because, as it turns out, Donald Trump didn't break any tax laws. Donald Trump, like a lot of people, used the tax laws to his advantage. Now, eventually, Congress changed some of those laws, so if Trump had continued doing some of the things he did previously, he would be in violation of the law. But when the law changed, Donald Trump changed. And I was likening this. I did my pregame warm-up video at Facebook this morning. I've been in media 30 years. Back in the 1990s, when we still used to read magazines in print, that is, you didn't read them on the computer, I used to subscribe to a great many magazines, and I would get them at my house in the mail once a month or once a week. I was able in the 1990s to deduct those as expenses because I was in the news business, so reading these periodicals, that was related to my work. And then the dang government changed the law, and I could no longer deduct those expenses. Did I continue deducting those expenses illegally? No, I didn't. I stopped. Just like Donald Trump stopped when the law changed. But the New York Times put 5 people on this story, found that Trump didn't violate any laws, but yet the headline tries to give the impression that Trump did. Do they still believe that they're working in a pre-internet age and that nobody is looking at what they're doing? Because there's Eric Erickson writing about it. Erickson's email was in my inbox this morning when I got out of bed and I was sipping my coffee and reading through it. And I'm not alone. And yet they continue to play the game either at ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSDNC, sometimes Fox, and at your major newspapers as if they have a monopoly. You want to talk about a clueless bunch. James Carville, speaking on MSDNC, talking about Hillary Clinton's latest troubles, And listen to he tries to ally in his blame about all of this.
But first of all, let's start again. He was acting in concert and coordination with the House Republicans. End of story.
He's talking about James Comey, okay?
But first of all, let's start again. He was acting in concert and coordination with the House Republicans. End of story. He gave the letter to him. They gave it to Fox News. Also, we have the extraordinary case of the KGB being involved in this race and selectively leaking things from the Clinton campaign that they hacked. So the American democracy is really under attack here.
Now, no one has found any evidence that the WikiLeaks were obtained by the Russians and then handed over to Julian Assange. People are making that claim a lot, but there is no evidence. Secondly, Comey wasn't working in league with the House Republicans. Comey's release went to both House Republicans and House Democrats on Friday. And Fox News didn't get a copy of it either until somebody in the House sent it along to everyone in media. So you understand how they're trying to say he's lying. But they hope if they repeat that lie often enough, well, they know that, the free lunch crowd that makes up the core of the Democrat Party isn't the swiftest bunch. I mean, they're all out there guzzling 40 ounces and collecting their EBT cards out of your tax dollars, and they all think that Santa Claus is coming year-round. And so they're going to be easily swayed by these lies, I suppose. I was watching Waters last night. He was on Bill O'Reilly's program, and he went down to Key West where they had some bacchanalia, Halloween bacchanalia, and he was asking people questions about the campaign. And we just heard from Lightbulb Head. You wouldn't believe how many dim bulbs that he encountered. And a lot of these people, unfortunately, are going to vote, which is why we need people to be able to pass a citizenship test before they get a right to vote any longer. I don't care if you feel that's unfair. The dumb dummies shouldn't go to the polls. You got it? You should be able to answer a few questions about your country, the Constitution, the laws of your country, and some of the people who are serving in public office. And if you can't get those right, then you don't vote. You stay home. And you let the people who really know what the country is about go out and get the job done. Because obviously your only stake in it is, what do I get? Where's my free stuff? Well, I'm sorry. It's coming to an end. It may not come to an end next Tuesday because they flooded the country with so many illegal immigrants in hopes that they'll all go out and vote, and the dead will vote multiple times. When they tell you that there really isn't much voter fraud, what they mean is they haven't caught many people. It's no different. I've made this analogy before. I drove to Boise and back a couple of times in the last couple of weeks. I set my cruise control at 80, which is the speed limit, or in that neighborhood, maybe a little under that. And I get passed by dozens and dozens and dozens of people. None of them, or virtually none of them, ever get pulled over for speeding. Why is that? Well, a trooper once told me, he said, when you go fishing, do you catch every fish in the lake? No. So you understand how this works. There's a reason that they say voter fraud is something that really isn't a huge concern. It's because they rarely catch anybody who's engaged in it. 8:15, Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Some of the things we've got coming up. Steve Millington will be joining us in studio between 8:30 and 9 o'clock this morning. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. Just after the 9 o'clock news, we'll spend a few minutes with State Representative Stephen Hartkin. He's going to outline some of his thoughts. Of course, he is running for re-election. Election day, once again, for you Democrats out there, just in case you aren't sure, it's 1 week from today. I do know a great many people are engaged in voting already in advance. Just remember, all of you Democrats out there and welfare recipients who may be voting, if you vote early, you can't go out and vote a second time on Election Day. Telephone number to reach our show, 736-0300, 736-0300. I also read today, this was fascinating. You talk about how a lot of people in politics, even some Republicans, are so two-faced. Remember all those stories we heard during the presidential primaries about how roundly despised Ted Cruz was by his fellow Republicans on Capitol Hill? There's a story today at the Washington Examiner. Do you know which U.S. senator is the most in demand to go to other states and campaign for his fellow senators? Ted Cruz. We hate him, but we sure need him. And I get to something here that was also written by Eric Erickson today, and we qualify that by saying he's no Trump fan. but he was talking about how we've been warned about the rise of Trump. And the Republican establishment has just ignored the warnings that have been going on in the country. And he's writing about Rush Limbaugh. Because Limbaugh, along with a lot of other people in talk radio, are taking the blame this year for supposedly creating Trump. And the Republican Party would say we didn't have anything to do with it. Mr. Erickson writes about Limbaugh. First, he has pointed out repeatedly that the base of the GOP is deeply upset with Republicans in Washington. No shock there. Second, Limbaugh has pointed out that the conservatism preached inside Washington is not the same that relates to people outside the Beltway. Thirdly, he has pointed out consistently for the past several years that if Republicans did not get a clue, the base was going to abandon them for someone else. Fourth, Limbaugh pointed out that the GOP's constant insistence that it opposes amnesty only to see its elected officials pushing it full steam ahead was going to kill the party. 5, he has pointed out that as the GOP's political interests move more toward the Chamber of Commerce and the donor class, the voters the party depends on are going to feel increasingly alienated. Rejecting Main Street for Wall Street is not something the party should do. And lastly, and more importantly, Rush has long held that if Republicans offer up a Democrat-like candidate, voters like Coca-Cola drinkers are going for actual Democrats because you can't beat the real thing. And yet, if Trump does come down to defeat, and the free lunch crowd is still out there, and the double voters, and the illegal voters, if he does go down to defeat, Republicans, the establishment is going to think it's going to be able to reimpose its control grid, and they are likely going to come after talk radio. And I'm telling you right now, way back in 2007, when Trent Lott was still serving in the U.S. Senate, Republican at the time from Mississippi, he led a charge to extinguish talk radio by restoring the fairness doctrine, even though today we have 500 TV channels. You have websites in the millions, if not billions. You have all of these other alternatives out there. They did it because Republican talk shows were opposed to amnesty for illegal aliens, and the base was rising up, and the base was telling their leaders in Washington, no, 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 and no. And they didn't like that because they wanted to do it and get it rushed through quickly, no pun intended there, around their voters, and then they thought it would all be forgotten soon, and we won't have to deal with it. And by the way, vote for me. Here's a picture of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, Ronald Reagan, Ronald Reagan. See, I like Ronald Reagan. I said his name a lot. Vote for me. And here we are today with Donald Trump as the party nominee. And yet, if he wins, game over for the GOP establishment once and for all. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I'm looking for my temperature gauge here. They've moved it on me. It's 41. On our way to about 54, I believe, before the day is over. On this All Souls Day, is that it? No, All Saints? Gosh, some of you out there who are better Catholics than I am should straighten me out. I was explaining to some friends the other day about the success I've been having with a diet that I've been on, and I've dropped well over 30 pounds. Did it in less than the first month. I think things will slow down a bit now. You get through that trial period, and then it becomes a little bit more of a, nothing is for free in this life, and that includes losing weight. But I got to share a story with you about a member of the House of Representatives who he got, I think it was gastric bypass surgery done, and he lost weight. Although he didn't lose a lot, but he said it may have prolonged his life by a few years. Share that story with you in just a moment. But speaking of your health, how about your hearing health? Well, I got to mention our good friends at Mount Harrison Audiology in Rupert, specifically Dr. Christine Pickup. She reminds you as we enjoy the crisp fall air and the crunch of leaves on the ground, the holidays are coming soon, and Dr. Pickup and her staff, well, they don't want you to miss any even a minute of it. You need to call Mount Harrison Audiology today and find solutions to hearing loss and be ready to enjoy all the fun of family gatherings and special moments with your loved ones. You can schedule your hearing health checkup at 312-0957. Life is worth hearing, and that number once more, 312-0957. Jerry Nadler is a member of the House of Representatives in Washington, not necessarily well known west of the Mississippi River. He used to be the size of 2 members, maybe 3 members of the House of Representatives. As I said, he then had gastric bypass done. I shared with you earlier, my voice is cracking. I feel like I'm going through adolescence again. I shared with you earlier James Carville's comments when he was trying to blame He said James Comey was in league with the Russians and with the GOP. It's all baloney, and I think even a lot of liberals out there are maybe a little embarrassed by that sort of stupidity being peddled. Jerry Nadler was speaking, I think, on the Clinton News Network, and he said, well, the solution here is if you don't want Hillary Clinton necessarily prosecuted down the road, vote for Democrats and they'll ensure that nothing will happen.
It's a very good reason to have a Democratic House and Senate so we can get on with the government, with the business of the people, instead of wasting our time on all kinds of investigations that will ultimately go nowhere. You look at the entire Clinton presidency, Bill Clinton presidency, Whitewater, Travelgate, this gate, that gate, nothing went anywhere until you got the Monica Lewinsky thing that didn't even exist.
Of course, that didn't go anywhere because his party was in control at the time, and, well, they blocked any efforts to move it along for political reasons, not because it was right or wrong. You've got to make sure that's clear. You're probably wondering, I've heard this Nadler fellow before.
I can't stop eating. I eat because I'm unhappy. And I'm unhappy because I eat. It's a vicious cycle.
I want to thank Mike Myers for chiming in there, too, as well. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. The website means anywhere we are all over the world, or you are, you can tune in by clicking on that Listen Live icon and hear what we have to say. Can I also quickly mention, too, we soon should have the app ready and available for your smartphone, so you could also listen to us if you're out of the transmitter range. Transmitter and tower range, you could hear us there. We have a caller with us at 827. Caller, you're next. You're on the air on KLIX.
Yeah, that Mike Myers piece exactly, I think, reflects way too much of what our country is really like. The other day I was talking to a person, a friend of mine, and a lady, and I love her to death, but she says, well, I just don't know who to vote for. And it just caught me off guard, and I was short with her. And, you say to yourself, you're grown people. It's time for you to figure out what's going on. It's time to find out where we are as a country. And if truly this is the situation where if they elect a Democrat and they create the environment that gets them perpetually reelected, how is it we out here where the rubber meets the road, how are we going to fight back? Or are we just going to slowly but surely allow ourselves to be taken advantage of? Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. And I just got a note here from a friend listening online, speaking of the website. He says 4 states actually have rules so you can change your vote if you realize you were stupid voting for Hillary. Thank you, Patrick. Patrick is a retired undercover narcotics agent for the federal government, knows a little bit what it's like to be living out there working on the mean streets of this country, and guys like him should actually get 2 votes. Anybody who's been in one of those combat zones, actually think about that for a moment. If somebody has an honorable discharge, for instance, from the U.S. military, give them 2 votes. If they can prove combat service, give them 3. You will never see, because the Daily Caller says in some of the WikiLeaks that have been released that it shows that the White House had disdain for the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the other military. Are you shocked at all that a bunch of socialist, quasi-Marxist, liberal Democrats would have it in for the U.S. military? Gosh, what a shock. We've got a break coming up. Steve Millington will be joining us in just a few minutes on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. You are in the studio. We need to tell people that.
Yes, thank you. I am right here. I just was kind of chuckling at the way you couched that last phrase right there. Gosh, imagine that. What a deal. What a deal.
We've got more with Steve on the way. Bill Colley, too, here on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com. It's 8:30 and it's 41.